This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jespersen.
Well, she's the youngest female cabinet minister in Canadian history. She's the underdog for all intents and purposes in the Liberal leadership race, but she's touring the country right now looking to inspire entrepreneurs and would-be entrepreneurs. That's her message. If she's elected as the next Prime Minister of Canada, Karina Gould would unleash 1 million new movers and shakers. What can she do to get the attention of Liberal Party members? What can she do to grab the attention of Canadians? We sit down with her in an exclusive in this episode of Real Talk, which is happening with the support of Alberta's top online real estate school. Today, I want to make sure that you're aware of Relo online at relo.ca. I know that you've seen your friends, you've seen family working in real estate, and whether you've told them or not to their faces, you admire, you're maybe even a little bit jealous of their ability to work their own hours, choose their own clients, and of course that unlimited earning potential. Who wouldn't love that? If you're considering a career in residential or commercial real estate, you must begin with Relo. Why? Because you can get licensed easily with clearly explained concepts and helpful instruction from real live humans. You can save on costs with their economical course bundles, and you can get support, business tips, and a whole lot more. You can learn more about what to expect, including those in-depth webinars on their website. And make sure when you're signing up to register, keep the promo code Ryan100 locked and loaded. That's all one word, Ryan100. It'll take $100 off the Alberta commercial and the Alberta residential real estate bundles when you get started today at relo.ca. As we welcome to the studio a contender for the leadership of the Liberal Party of Canada. She has served as a cabinet minister and the proud MP out of Burlington, Ontario. Thanks for making time for us here in Edmonton. Karina Gould, it's nice to have you in the studio.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
Yeah, you were watching. We call it our Real Talk pre-roll, and these are our shorts and our reels that we play before the show as the live stream audience starts to join us. And I saw you getting a chuckle from our coverage of Mark Carney's $2,000 shoes. It's minus 30 right now in Edmonton. Are you wearing $2,000 boots? What did you spend on your boots?
No, my boots were $30 at Bay Days.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
You going to put a tweet out about it or post that on Instagram?
No, I don't think so.
You say 1 million entrepreneurs. You're going to unleash them. You're going to set them free and make life easier for those that would do business in Canada. Everybody's talking about the economy in Canada right now, in particular with our largest trading partner. What would you do differently than your competitors?
Well, so I think the fact that you raised what's happening south of the border with Donald Trump, we talk about interprovincial trade barriers. Obviously, we need to knock those down. We need to make sure that we are expanding our markets abroad, but we also need to grow our economy here at home. And so what I announced yesterday in Edmonton was let's unleash entrepreneurship in this country. Let's make it easier for Canadians to start and grow a business. Let's ensure they have access to capital. And so when they're growing their business, they can actually stay here in Canada. And let's make sure that we're providing them the supports they need, particularly in high growth industries. I mean, I'm here in Edmonton because you guys are doing great work in AI. You're doing great work in biotech. You're leading the country in these fields. And so let's do what we can to support the amazing homegrown entrepreneurs who want to be here in Canada and who are going to create those good jobs.
This Liberal leadership race, and I say it respectfully, but in the media has basically been covered as Mark Carney versus Chrystia Freeland. And in recent days, people are pretty much just crowning Mark Carney and talking about Mark Carney versus Pierre Poilievre. How do you get your message out there?
Yeah, well, yesterday was a great day because when you looked at the fundraising numbers, I'm actually in second and I have more donors. So I have the second most amount of donors as well across the country. So, there's momentum that is building. And, we had a great event in Edmonton last night. I was in Red Deer earlier yesterday. Unfortunately, I had a really big event planned in Calgary, but the situation at Pearson Airport meant that I missed it. But I'm hearing from folks across the country who are excited about having me in the race. They're excited for someone who represents the future of Canada and not just the past, and somebody who has a really positive vision for this country.
Always interesting to talk to Liberals that are touring touring the prairies and to see what that experience has been like. Obviously, a bit of a rough ride, polling-wise and otherwise, for I guess your former boss, the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. What have you been picking up on vibe-wise in the province right now?
Yeah, I mean, look, there are a lot of people in Alberta who share a progressive vision for this country, and they want to be part of Canada. One of the things that I've been so proud of over the past couple of weeks is Canadians across this country, including people in Alberta, choosing Canada and putting Canada first and saying, now is the time for us to, not like stop dialoguing and discussing and debating, but for us to really focus on being Canadians. And one of the things that I heard over the past couple of days in Alberta is just how important Alberta is for Canada, how important Albertans are. And I value that. I think that Albertans, matter here in not just in this province, but right across the country. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here, because, we have to make sure that we are being inclusive of everybody in this country and valuing what particularly folks in Alberta provide to Canada.
The message from the Premier has been like, well, obviously Alberta matters, and Alberta matters a whole lot. And to a certain degree, she's been going at diplomacy alone for the most part in direct dealings or attempted direct communication with President Donald Trump, or at least his administration. And there's a lot of talk about pipeline access to water. We've joked almost, and for a lot of people, I think they laugh so they don't cry, to see Quebec's Premier talk about perhaps the value of pipelines across the country and the like. What's your position on pipelines and the future of Alberta energy were you to be elected Prime Minister?
So look, I mean, there has to be a business case for pipelines in Canada, and we need to make sure we actually have a proponent that would do it. I think we have to have a real dialogue in Canada about what energy security looks like in our country. One thing that we are not talking about, and maybe we should be talking about, is more refining capacity in Canada. It doesn't really make that much sense that we send our oil south of the border to be refined to then send it back. So I think that's a conversation that we need to be having. We need energy security in Canada, and we also need to make sure that we're getting our resources to market. I mean, we did that with the Trans Mountain pipeline. And so let's have that conversation. I think that is something that's really important for us as Canadians.
What do you make of polling that's shown? I mean, obviously the Liberal Party has seen like a big drop, and the Conservatives have seen a huge surge since Mr. Trudeau's resignation as Prime Minister. Well, no, I'm saying at the beginning, over the past 18 months or so, but then you're quite right, the opposite has happened. I don't know that the Conservatives have necessarily plummeted, but we've seen the Liberals among, stated sort of voters with intention to vote, if they were to vote today, that the Liberals have clawed back like double digits points-wise. Does it give you optimism? Like what have you been picking up with the spirit within your colleagues? I have to imagine there were some probably low moments as people even look to save their own skin politically in the next election.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I would say the last 18 months, it's been hard to be a Liberal, especially with the polls. And there's a lot of legitimate frustration out there. One of the things that I've talked about in this leadership race is that we have to recognize as Liberals that we have to re-earn the trust of Canadians, that we had really lost it for a while. And I think part of it is because, Canadians were telling us what they were frustrated about, and we weren't necessarily responding to those frustrations. But I think what we've seen over the past couple of weeks in particular is when it comes to, Donald Trump, Canadians are looking at who do we want in government to protect Canada, and they are overwhelmingly starting to choose the Liberal Party of Canada, because what they've seen is when it comes to fighting for Canada, it's been the Liberal government that has been there to protect Canadians. And what they've heard from Pierre Poilievre is give in to Trump as soon as possible. I mean, they hear him basically repeating Trump's lines and ripping off of him. I mean, he's like a little Timbit Trump. And here in Canada, that's not what Canadians want. They want to have someone who's going to stand up for our sovereignty. They want someone who's going to protect our jobs, protect our industries, and protect our values and our way of life. And Pierre Poilievre is just, following Donald Trump's playbook.
So what does that look like to you? How would you approach dealing with Donald Trump? He's different than any other elected leader probably in world history.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, from an unpredictability standpoint, but I mean, you're starting to have a conversation about some pretty wild comparables, if you want to talk about the most unpredictable leader in world history.
Yeah, and I think part of it is recognizing that this is not going to stop over the next 4 years. And so we have to have some ice in our veins when it comes to dealing with Donald Trump. And that's one thing that I've been able to do over the last 10 years in dealing and, being in the House of Commons, being a politician, dealing with people who I don't necessarily agree with. And I've always been able to stand up very strongly and very firmly for our values as Canadians, push back against bullies. And when it comes to Donald Trump, it's demonstrating strength and it's demonstrating resolve and it's showing that we're not going to back down. And that's one thing that, Canadians have done in spades. And I think what Donald Trump is starting to recognize about Canada is that, yes, we're nice, yes, we're polite, but we know how to take the gloves off if you get into a fight.
What did you make of the hockey game on Saturday night?
Well, look, we've got a big one coming tomorrow. And so this is our moment. I mean, look, I'm super proud of our hockey players. Obviously tensions were very high.
Yeah, what do you think of people booing the American anthem?
I get it. Look, I understand. Canadians are saying, hey, we have been friends and allies and partners. Our soldiers fought together. They died together in many conflicts around the world. Like, what are you doing right now? And again, saying like, we don't want this. We didn't ask for this fight. We want to be friends. We want to be partners. We want to be allies. Our two countries have benefited from this. We have prospered on both sides of the border. So stop picking a fight with your friends and let's work together and go after the real foes like China. So from my perspective, I really understand where Canadians are coming from. That they're just frustrated about what's going on because they're saying, hey, like, this is not who we are. Why are you doing this to us?
It's been interesting to see, different people respond to the phrase trade war, talk about kind of the loaded language and commenting on this type of thing. I know that another contender in the race, Chrystia Freeland, among other policies, has talked about tariffing Teslas at 100%. What do you think is the right answer? What do you think is the right response to some of Trump's targeted tariffs?
Well, so first of all, the tariffs haven't come into place yet. So I don't think we should be escalating things at the moment. But I think what we need to demonstrate is that we know exactly what we're doing and we know how to have the greatest impact on Americans and American industries, and that they rely and depend on Canada. And that if they are going to try to hurt Canadians economically, we will respond in kind and we will respond with even more strength. Because I think what's important is demonstrating not just to the president, but to everyday Americans that they rely on Canada and that they need us for so much of what they're doing. And the things that the president is talking about, when he said like, we don't need Canada, we can do all these things. Yeah, maybe in 20 years, right? Like for the United States to build up those economies, to build up those industries, it's going to take a long time. So in the interim, like, let's not have this fight. But if you want to, we will show you that we can go toe to toe. We are smarter and we will win.
This has been a wake up call, though, hasn't it? I mean, I think for a lot of people, and we're going to be talking to Shauna Feth, CEO of the Alberta Chambers of Commerce, after we talk to you. I know for a lot of entrepreneurs, the tariff threat is something that they have to take deadly seriously, because for a lot of people, it means, it could be the survival of their business that's at stake. For you as a cabinet minister, as a federal politician, as a leadership candidate, did it serve as a bit of a wake-up call for you? Would you choose a different phrase? How has it impacted you as a leader, as a thought leader, as a political leader?
You know what it made me reflect on, Ryan, is that we all kind of, in Canada in general, all of us have taken the relationship with the United States for granted. And we've expected that ease of access to the market will always be there. And I think what right now is demonstrating is that after, President Trump lost the first election, we were like, okay, it's fine. Like, we're back to normal, like everything's going to be okay. And people didn't really expect that he was going to come back and that he was going to win again. And what this has demonstrated to me is that the relationship with the United States is one that we have to work on always, and we can't take our foot off the gas. And for me, that means that, that's advertising campaigns in the United States as to why the relationship with Canada is important. But it's not just for industry leaders, it's for everyday Americans. And to recognize that, President Trump is going to be creating a lot of chaos over the next 4 years. So we're going to have to be very thoughtful and smart about our response. But even 4 years from now, we can't assume that the relationship is going to go back to normal. We have to keep working on it for the future.
Wise Kyle's watching us. He's in our live chat right now,
Yeah.
powered by Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider. He says the Conservatives haven't dropped. He says, they're still ready to rock. He says the NDP has tanked and all that support is going to the Liberals. Would you agree? You're nodding your head.
Well, I think the Conservatives have dropped a bit, right? I mean, they were polling at 47% at one point, and they're, down into the 30s. So they have dropped, empirically. But I think, in terms of where we are getting support, it's from some people who had parked their votes with the Conservatives who are coming back to the Liberals, and people who were maybe thinking the NDP was an alternative and are coming back to the Liberals as well. So we're the centrist party. We're the party that, brings people from both sides and can deliver on, what centrist Canadians want.
I can already hear some people scoffing at the centrist party thing because they'll talk about the party of paper straws and the party of people kind and feel like the Liberals kind of swung a little bit left. Do you agree with that assessment? Do you think the party needs to bring it back a little bit to pragmatic common sense governance?
Well, I mean, I think what's always been the strength of the Liberal Party is that we're able to take ideas from the left and from the right and to deliver them. I mean, that's why I'm a Liberal, is because I'm not someone who is ideological. I'm someone who is about good ideas and delivering for Canadians. So that's, what I want the Liberal Party to be, is to really be that middle way that can do good things for Canadians.
Michael's watching in the live chat, powered by Park Power, says, I agree with refineries being in Canada, but he says, but they could take 10 years to build, and the money that would be involved would be massive. Are we prepared to fund them with taxpayer dollars? What do you think would be the right approach there?
I think that's a dialogue that we have to have. And look, I mean, pipelines take a long time to build as well, right? So we have to think about, where does the country need to be in 10 years and what is going to make the most sense? When we talk about pipelines to markets and to water, Europe is transitioning away from oil. So in 10 years, does that make the most sense? Or does it make more sense to refine here in Canada? This is the dialogue we should be having in our country, and we should be having a debate about it, and seeing where the puck is going and skating towards it.
The way to any Albertan's heart is a hockey metaphor. That probably works across the country. It's somebody in
Look, I grew up with 3 hockey playing brothers.
Oh, did
right?
you?
I played a bit too, and I was terrible, but all of my brothers played hockey, so I spent a lot of time in arenas.
Where are you in the birth order? People will read into that.
I'm the oldest.
The oldest.
I'm the oldest.
Do you think that there's, does the I don't know, stigma, but does the reputation of the oldest child stick?
Well, I mean, I'm certainly assertive, and I had 3 younger hockey playing brothers, so I know how to handle a lot of chaos.
You met a pretty significant milestone. I think it was just a few days ago, right, when your campaign hit that $125,000 fundraising threshold that was due at the time. What's the total? You got to raise just under $400,000, right? That's the entry fee.
Yeah.
People seemed kind of surprised in a way that you did it. Did you take that personally?
Well, Ryan, people always underestimate me. That has been the story of my life, and I have always surprised people.
Huh. Yeah, because that there's some people that are like, there's even people in our chat, and they're saying this is going to be a great experience for Karina.
Yeah.
I like what she's bringing to the table. One viewer said, but she doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell. What do you say to these people?
Well, vote for me and I'll win, right? I mean, this is the thing that I was reflecting on this. When I ran in 2015, I ran in Burlington, Ontario, which is typically a more conservative riding. And people said oh, it's really cute that she's running. That's really nice. Look, I work my butt off. I work really hard. I talk to people. I listen to people. One of the things that I think makes me different is that I'm a partisan, but I'm not ideological. I left that race less partisan than I began it because I listened to people and I understand where they're coming from and why they make the decisions that they do. And I have won in a conservative riding 3 times. And, when I ran in 2015, people literally said to me, it's really nice that you're running. This is probably a 2-shot step for you. But, we would really prefer to have an older business guy. And I was reflecting on that a couple of days ago because I'm hearing the same thing these days. And I'm like, you know what? No, we don't. You know what we need? We need somebody who has the energy, who has the experience required for the job, because this is a political job, who knows how to fight and how to win, and who has a real vision for this country and is going to unite people and bring people along. One of the things that I've done really well in Parliament over the last decade is built relationships with people of all different political parties. When I was Minister of Families, I worked here in Alberta with the UCP government to bring forward affordable childcare. I did that with Doug Ford in Ontario, Blaine Higgs in New Brunswick, I'm not too proud to work with people who I disagree with, but to make sure that I get the right deal and deliver for Canadians.
How would you characterize your experience working with the Alberta government?
Yeah. So, I mean, look, I worked really well with the Alberta government. We certainly had disagreements on things, but I also recognized, the things that were important for them. So when it came to the childcare agreements, they were really focused on having more female entrepreneurs. And so we came up with an agreement where, yes, we were moving forward with more not-for-profit childcare agreements, but I also recognize that there are certain things that are unique in Alberta that we should respect and be able to move forward with. And we absolutely had our disagreements, but I'm able to work with them. One of the things that I've been disappointed with us as a federal government is that we didn't stand up more when it came to protecting the CPP, and when Danielle Smith was talking about taking Alberta out of the CPP. That's something that doesn't just hurt Albertans, it hurts all Canadians. And as a government, we have to make sure that we can work with people with whom we disagree, but stand up very strongly and very clearly when it doesn't make sense for Canadians.
We're talking to Karina Gould. If you're just joining us, live streaming across 7 platforms, presented by California Closets. She's a contender for the Liberal leadership. Whoever wins will be the next Prime Minister of Canada. Do you expect whoever wins to call an election like right away? Is that what you would do?
So I would make the decision that's right for the country at the time. If we are in a full-blown trade war with the United States, should we be in an election at that moment, or should we be focusing our energy on ensuring that we are protecting Canadians, their jobs, our economy, our values? So
there'll be millions of people that'll say, though, you got to go get a mandate, right? If you're going to win the Liberal leadership, you got to get a mandate.
And look, I'll make the decision that's best for Canada and best for Canadians, because again, if there are 1 million people who have lost their jobs because we're in a trade war with the United States, we need to ensure that we have supports for them and businesses so that when we do win the trade war, they have good jobs to go back to. So from my perspective, I need to see where we are on March 10th.
Okay, I want to ask you about a $60 billion deficit. I want to ask you about spending, fiscal responsibility, and I want to ask you about what I think is a pretty big broken promise from your party, in particular the Prime Minister. I want to see how you would approach it. That in just a second with Karina Gould. First, Real Talkers, when events like we're talking about beyond our borders put Canada's economy in jeopardy, we've got to make the right choices here at home, and that looks exactly like investing in the world-class research and learning that's fueling Alberta's prosperity right now. We simply can't afford to underfund academic staff at the University of Alberta because we can't afford to lose the teachers, researchers, and the students we need to power Alberta's future. And that's why I'm asking you to go to supportthespark.ca and help keep Alberta's future strong. We're proud to have a world-class university in our home city of Edmonton, delivering a great education to students, contributing critical research to the world. And the academic staff at the U of A are the heart of the teaching and research that make that university great. But big provincial cuts are putting that at risk, and leadership at the U of A simply isn't investing in frontline learning. Go to supportthespark.ca. Help keep our future strong. This is a message from the Association of Academic Staff of the University of Alberta. There's a really great opportunity coming up right now on behalf of the Alberta Women's Health Foundation to support some of the incredible and groundbreaking research that's happening right here in our home province. And I want to make sure that you don't miss your chance to join and attend the first ever Alberta Women's Health Foundation Luminaries Luncheon presented by the Scotiabank Women Initiative. This inspiring new event supports women's health research. Guests are going to have a chance to take part and hear from some of these pipeline to possibility researchers, 5 early and mid-career women's health researchers showcasing their projects and the anticipated impacts on women's health. My good friend Linda Steele is going to be emceeing and moderating a panel on these researchers talking about advancing women's healthcare across the country, plus a keynote from Joanna Griffiths. She's the founder and CEO of Nixwear. If you know, you know. She's going to be sharing the Nix way, building a brand with purpose. You can get your tickets today for this event coming up on March 7th at albertawomenshealthfoundation.org. At California Closets, they're proud to be operating locally owned, employing local designers and local installers, sourcing all of their materials from right here in Canada. And of course, it's all manufactured out of their beautiful facilities in Edmonton and Calgary. When you deal with the California Closets team, you are working with a locally family-owned business that has your best interest in mind. They can work with any space and any budget. I'm saying this as a satisfied customer. I can't believe it's already been 8 years since they transformed our family room in such a beautiful way. It all starts with a free design consultation. You've got nothing to lose. You can book that today. Check out some of the work that they've done by visiting californiaclosets.ca. And as we're talking about dollars and cents, we're talking about investments and budgets and bottom lines. Our friends at North Road Investment Council are asking you to take a look at how your investments did in 2024. You know, the Canadian stock market is measured by the TSX Composite Index. Maybe Karina will talk about this. Returned over 21% in 2024. This is a return that you as a Canadian should be proud of. If the Canadian equity portion of your portfolio didn't do that well, or maybe you're not even sure how it did, you might be interested in learning about a different way to invest. Index investing tools are used by many sophisticated investors around the world, including North Road Investment Council. To learn more about using passive investment tools in your investment portfolio, make sure you check out their website today. That's northroadic.com. So obviously all hell broke loose when the Prime Minister asked at that time the Finance Minister to deliver this fall economic update, which included a pretty tough pill to swallow for anybody, about a $60 billion deficit, and everybody knows how that played out. A cabinet reshuffle of sorts over Zoom, a letter unexpectedly, they say, and the next thing you know, Chrystia Freeland has resigned her post. I think people can probably understand why you wouldn't want to step in front of the microphones and talk about a $60 billion deficit, but that's where Canada's at right now. I would imagine a pretty prominent question that people are asking you is, what would you do differently? How would you get spending back on track? What are kind of the high points of your fiscal plan?
Yeah. So first of all, I think one thing's important to note about the deficit is that a lot of that is money that is owed to First Nations in Canada, and it hasn't necessarily been paid out yet, but it was accounted for. So, you have to account for that at some point in your fiscal books, but that is something that happened this year. So I think that's an important thing because nobody ever really talked about that.
You're right.
And so we actually need to clarify that, and it will eventually be paid out at some point, but you have to do that accounting. Look, anyone who tells you that they are going to immediately balance the books is probably not telling you the truth, or they are talking about massive cuts to programming and services for Canadians. I also think that right now, while we are facing these potential tariff threats from the United States, we need to be very clear that we will use the fiscal power of the federal government to support Canadians if and when that is needed. So, I think we have to be honest about where we are. And I think sometimes in Canada, we have this conversation about balanced books that's not really beyond the surface level and not actually talking about what that means for everyday Canadians. For me, it is about getting our fiscal house in order, and I would certainly work towards balance, but I'm not going to say that I'm going to balance the books immediately because, you have to have a good understanding of what that means in terms of programs and service delivery for Canadians.
What's your stance on the carbon tax, in particular the consumer carbon tax, and how would you answer concerns that both, environmentalists, I don't want to sort of boil this down to an overly simplistic and insulting two groups of people, because I believe that there's people that can acknowledge that we are facing in sort of what some might describe as an existential environmental crisis, something that demands leadership and action. There are also others that are pointing out that the economic hardships have resulted from this carbon tax, and there may be another way to do it. And there seems to be growing momentum behind that argument, including from progressives. Not everybody's sold on the consumer carbon tax anymore. Are you?
Well, look, I think we have to have a real dialogue about it. Like, Ryan, one of the things that we did not do well as a government is actually talk to Canadians about what we are actually doing. And when it comes to the consumer price on carbon, we did not do a good job of talking about it. And I'm prepared to have a dialogue about this. What I've said is I'm going to cancel the planned increase for April 1st, because what we're hearing from Canadians is that they can't afford to, spend money on anything else right now. But what we're actually talking about when people are frustrated with the carbon tax is not that they don't care about the environment. It's not that they don't care about fighting climate change. They're really frustrated about how expensive things are and how unaffordable life is for Canadians right now. That's what's at the heart of this. And they're saying, I care about climate change. I want to protect the environment, but I just can't afford any more expenses. And so let's get to the heart of what's actually at that. And so what I'm proposing to do is to cut the GST by 1% for a year, to see how that goes, cut it from 5 to 4%, to say to Canadians, that's going to save you on average $700 and $750. That's more than what you would pay on the consumer price on carbon, and you get the carbon rebate back, right? So how do we address affordability for Canadians? I'm also wanting to increase the powers of the Competition Bureau. I mean, in line with what I'm saying about entrepreneurship, let's give Canadians more choice so that they get better prices at the till. And, here in Alberta and across the country, what are people really frustrated with? The price of housing, the increase to their mortgages, the increase to rents. So I put forward a really ambitious housing plan that is going to increase the supply in the market, to build more houses, to truly eliminate homelessness, and to get more first-time home buyers into the market in a really meaningful way. So when people talk about the carbon tax, it's actually not about the environment. It's actually about affordability.
When Justin Trudeau resigned, I guess about a month ago, just over a month ago, he said that his biggest regret as prime minister was not moving forward with electoral reform. This is a promise he made to Canadians about 10 years ago during his first federal election campaign as Liberal leader. Trudeau promised that 2015 would be the last time that Canadians would elect a federal government under the first past the post system, where a candidate basically wins, obviously, by having the most votes. Would you make good on the promise toward electoral reform?
So I hear Canadians that they care about this, and what people are asking for right now is a citizens' assembly. I don't have an intellectual argument against a citizens' assembly. I think that when we're talking about our democracy and how we elect people, that's a reasonable thing to do, and to then, share it with Canadians. And, when I think about what happened with electoral reform, if I'm being really honest, we were kind of naive in how we thought we could do that. And putting together a parliamentary committee to study it and come up with a plan actually just evolved into partisanship, where every party had their own plan and nobody could agree on things. So my plan would be to say, this is something that citizens want. Let's have a national citizens assembly. And if they come up with something, let's put it to a referendum, and to make sure that if we're making a decision about how we choose to elect ourselves, that Canadians are on board with it.
I want to ask you this in closing. Thank you for your time. You got to hit the road. You're on your way to Saskatoon. Is that right?
I am,
You're going to hit the highway in minus 25.
Yeah.
Let people know for purposes of behind the curtain, we have no running water in this building right now. There's a burst pipe outside. It's I don't know if it's technically a polar vortex, but it's wild.
It's very cold.
How has the road tripping been, by the way, through the prairies? This cold snap's been something else.
It's been cold.
Yeah.
It's been cold, but it's been a warm
people
reception.
Still coming out, or is it hurting your attendance?
No, it's been a wonderful reception. People are braving the cold and coming out. They're putting their parkas on. It's been very cold, but it's been a warm reception.
Yeah. Let me ask you this then in closing. Have you introduced, you're focusing a lot, obviously, kind of the youth movement. You're the youngest candidate in the race. Does it bug you when people point that out, or is that just a reality?
It's just a reality. It's
a fact. What it is.
Yeah. I'm 20 years younger than everyone else. So.
Yeah, you're 10 years younger than me. But, you're talking a lot about innovation. You're talking a lot about entrepreneurs. Obviously, you came in here talking about correctly recognizing Edmonton as an AI capital of the world, let alone Canada. But have you introduced any innovative campaign strategies or policies that haven't received significant media attention, that I haven't asked you about, that maybe you're a little bit disappointed, but that are critical to your platform?
Yeah, look, so, I think what makes me a different candidate is that I know that we need to live and have government services for 2025 and for the future, and not for the past. So last week I talked about modernizing our social safety net in Canada. I graduated into the 2008 financial recession. I've never had a job where I qualify for EI, and my story is not different from a lot of millennials or Gen Zers. And it's not different from a lot of people who are in other generations as well, who find themselves working multiple jobs, being on contract, and just having government services that don't work in 2025. And so for me, I want to make sure that we have a social safety net that meets the moment, that supports people when they fall, and not just catches them, but allows them to rebound even higher. And what I said last week and what I'm committed to is also opening up the path to a basic income. Like, let's make sure that in Canada, people are able to succeed. Let's give everybody an opportunity to be successful. And that's what I think is, so beautiful about this country, is that we take care of each other when we need it, but we support each other when we're successful.
Thanks for your availability.
Thank you.
Yeah, the Carney and Freeland camps haven't returned our emails. What do you make of that?
Look, I am always somebody who's accessible. I've never been afraid of doing interviews. I think it's important to have dialogue. And I think that's what Canadians want. They want to have politicians that are accessible and that are willing to have the hard conversations and to be pushed, right? Not just to go into easy spaces. So thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate it. You can learn more about Karina Gould's leadership campaign at karinagould.ca. We'll link to it in the show notes on the podcast and on YouTube. The proud MP out of Burlington, and of course a contender for the leadership of the Liberal Party of Canada. Safe journey to Saskatoon.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, you got it. Hang tight for one quick second, because we're going to take you to the mountains here. Check this out. Yeah, every single Wednesday, courtesy of our friends at Tourism Jasper, we have an opportunity to basically step outside the news cycle. It doesn't matter which party you're going to vote for. It doesn't matter what province you live in, but everybody can enjoy Jasper. Can we all agree on that? It's MyJasper Memories, proudly presented by our friends at Tourism Jasper. And I want to tell you about a couple of things that are happening over the next couple of weeks. It is a beautiful time to get out there with this crisp mountain air. They've got a ton of snow out at Marmot Basin. And of course, all of the hoteliers, the restaurateurs out there ready to welcome you with open arms. And that includes everybody that's going to be hanging out at the Devour Food and Film Festival. You've still got some time to register for this. It's coming up in the first weekend of April. That's April 4th through the 6th. You can check out the details online. We're going to link to this on our website as well. You can check out the show notes on the podcast and on YouTube. This is your chance to basically discover a love of food, film, and wine in the absolute grandest of settings. Yeah, that's right, Jasper National Park. So you can join us in appreciating talented filmmakers and high-profile chefs from all around the globe. Cozy up in the Rockies when you celebrate cinema. You can indulge, of course, in exquisite food and wine and experience all that the Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge has to offer. Don't miss the new Friday night Real Indulgence. I love that. You see what they did there? The film festival, the Real Indulgence event, which is an exciting event to this year's lineup. That's coming up again April 4th through 6th at the incomparable Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge. You can find out more details online. Then in April, I know I need to focus on this too, Johnny, I think as there's like ice everywhere and the temperature is where it is right now. Soon, and very soon, we will start to see the signs of spring. And one of the big signs of spring in the Rockies, of course, is the half marathon. There's less than 70 days before this signature event, and I know that everybody gets so excited for this tradition. This is the Jasper Canadian Rockies Half Marathon, and they're inviting you to run Jasper, coming up on April 26th of 2025. In Jasper, your breath will be taken away, as it always is, by the majesty of the Canadian Rockies and Jasper National Park. The backdrop, the views will keep you inspired and in awe. Come explore the community and enjoy the entire event weekend. The race is a perfect running event for locals, for visitors, and of course for the restaurants and everybody gathering together, families that are celebrating that fellowship, and of course personal bests, right? People that are looking for a race with distances for all ages and abilities will love what the Jasper Canadian Rockies Half Marathon offers. Plus, keep in mind you're minutes away from all of the hotels, the shops, and of course those fabulous restaurants. Run with us, support the community, and rebuild Jasper. We're going to have links to everything in the show notes. And of course, you can always check out the wonderful resource that is the Tourism Jasper website with more details on skiing and snowboarding, some of the sleigh rides you can still fit in. Of course, it's the cabin capital of Canada. You know that. You can book your accommodations and plan out your own Jasper memories by visiting jasper.travel. MyJasper Memories is proudly presented weekly on Real Talk by our friends at Tourism Jasper. Johnny, I love to see Noob try again. He's in the chat right now, powered by Park Power, and I didn't have a chance to get to it, but when we went live right around 8:30 Mountain Time, he says, good morning, everyone. He says, I'm dropping off my kid around the corner from Friesen Brothers. He's in West Edmonton. He says, I'm going to have a mocha and listen to Real Talk. He wonders what he should add to his grocery list. Well, he must have got some good advice. He's checking in right now. He's live watching us at Friesen Brothers. He says he's enjoying his mocha, his croissant, sitting in the restaurant, relaxing with Real Talk and hanging out in the chat. He says, nice to have a no-rush morning and be able to sit and enjoy.
Okay, there you go. It's like a second living room over there at Friesen Bros.
I love that.
You got the TVs.
You got the fireplace going.
You don't got to do the dishes. It's beautiful.
Yeah, there you go. Our next guest knows a thing or two about business, knows a thing or two about the bottom lines, and it's always a pleasure to welcome the president and CEO of the Alberta Chambers of Commerce to the studio. She's got her eye on Alberta Business, president and CEO Shauna Feth. It's nice to see you.
You as well, Ryan.
Yeah, you had some well-deserved family time away, and what a snafu. Johnny and I were talking about this aviation, this plane crash at Toronto Pearson just the other day. I recognize a few people are still in hospital, but for all intents and purposes, almost everybody walking away from that. You were like on an adjacent runway.
Yeah.
Wild.
It was really, really wild. Because of the storms in Toronto the day before, we were already delayed, and then it was, took us 48 hours to get home, and then we landed in Toronto at literally 2:15, just as that
as it happened on the same day.
On the same day at the exact same time. Obviously different runways, so we didn't see anything. But I'm just so happy to hear that everybody's health conditions have been upgraded and nobody's in critical condition anymore. And it's just always terrifying, and you always your heart goes out to the people that were involved. It must have been very traumatizing.
Oh, I can't even imagine. We were talking to people yesterday, like, would you even be able to fly again? A lot of people pointing out that statistically speaking, flying is much more safer than highway travel or what have you. But anyway, we were thinking of you. We knew you were in transit. We're grateful to have you here with us in person. Hey, let me just ask you candidly. You've been hanging out in our green room listening to Karina Gould, not the biggest name in the Liberal leadership, but for where she's at in her political career, certainly accomplished. What did you make of what she put on the table through the lens of your role at the Alberta Chambers?
Well, I mean, we're a nonpartisan organization, so I'm never going to come out and verbally support any one candidate over another. But the messaging around entrepreneurship and how that being critical for the next leader of the country is a message that needs to be sent loud and clear to Ottawa and to the next leader of the country.
Yeah, it's interesting to see our live chat react to that, though, because politicians can come in and make promises, and the general public can either be compelled by those promises or not. But people have heard politicians make promises before, and I could see that reflected. People are saying, well, what has the Liberal government done for us in the last 9 years, type of thing. Now, she and the other candidates will have to sort of try to shake the reputation of the party and establish themselves as their own leaders. But this is, for years and years and years, kind of the role of the Chambers to advocate for those entrepreneurs. Have you seen meaningful policy at a provincial or federal level that you think that your fellow business owners and operators should be compelled by or getting excited about?
Well, I think just in general, we've had this enormous shakeup with everything that's happened, south of the border, with Trump, with tariffs. It's really caused us as business owners and as a country and as a province to really look in the mirror and reflect on, okay, how did we get to this point in time? We need to be really self-aware of the fact that, we need to look at Canada as a whole now, and businesses need to be really part of that policy process in terms of how do we make Canada great and strong, and how do we really put policy and process in place that allows us to, eliminate interprovincial trade, for an example. How do we look at the tax structure and tax reform? I mean, we haven't had a Royal Commission in decades and decades and decades, and we know that has to happen. We're in an infrastructure crisis. We need housing, we need those supports, and so I think there's a lot of this is on the table, and a lot of the candidates are talking about it in this leadership race. as well as all the parties are talking about it in terms of, the next federal election. And I think we just really, as businesses, need to be paying attention to what's coming out, what platforms are being presented, how do they align with, the policies and priorities that we have at the Alberta Chamber of Commerce in terms of how that aligns with what we're doing and how that aligns with, the priorities of business in the province.
Your team, I think, does more polling and research than anybody else I know. And I'm grateful that you've shared the results of this with us. You do your Alberta Perspective surveys. And it's okay, Johnny, if you want to put this on the screen. This is your U.S. tariff impacts survey results. And I thought that the numbers I wasn't surprised, but they're striking numbers. We'll get into some of these other questions. But I mean, generally speaking, you asked, do barriers to interprovincial trade or labor mobility limit your ability to respond to U.S. tariffs? So pretty interesting angle on that question. 21% of respondents, your members, said yes, significant barriers exist. Another 27% said yes, there are some barriers. So basically 48% or half of them said that this is a reality. How do you begin to address that, or what would be a step in the right direction?
Yeah, and so one of the things that we are doing, and this is one of the really the secret sauce around the chamber movement, is that we're not just provincial, we're not just local, but we're national, we're international. And we've been working very hard for the last month with our counterparts across the country, because we're forming a coalition of the Chamber of Federation. We're going to be talking to the premiers at the beginning of March in Toronto, and really what we've done is we've outlined these priorities. Interprovincial trade being one of the major ones, but infrastructure, housing, etc., taxes, all of the things I've already talked about. Presenting that in a format that we're coming as a unified front. It's the entire country working together as chambers to say, these are the priorities of our businesses, and we need to be paying attention to how we're eliminating some of these barriers, because there's been so many studies. I'm sure you've seen them all. There's so many statistics, but if we could tomorrow figure out the interprovincial trade barrier challenge, we could overnight offset the tariff impact to GDP. So that's pretty substantial when you think about that in terms of the trade-off there. So let's make Canada stronger no matter what going forward. I mean, everything's still up in the air for the most part. We don't know what's coming for sure and what's not coming.
But that nobody's. I have yet to meet somebody that's sitting there going, "Well, the tariffs haven't been imposed yet, so we'll cross that bridge when we get to it." It feels like everybody's taking steps to bulletproof themselves or do what they can to make those pivots, right?
Absolutely. And you know what? This may sound counterintuitive, but if there is any silver lining in all of this, it's made us really internally reflect on how we can do better as a country, and how we can support our businesses better to get their products to market. Not being able to trade with our closest allies and partners in the provinces is definitely creating undue hardship to businesses. And if this now is the time that can be a key priority, and we can get everybody, all of the elected officials, whether you're municipal, provincial, federal, on board, if we can have the businesses part of that huge conversation in terms of what is actually happening in your industry, like where are the barriers and what do we need to do to reduce and eliminate those, we could have huge impact. I mean, this is not happening overnight. We know that for sure, but there are things that can happen immediately that can alleviate some of those challenges. And then there are other things we can be thinking about long term, in terms of our own capacity and productivity within the country.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about my understanding of what reducing or eliminating interprovincial trade barriers would look like. I mean, you've got regulatory hurdles, you got economic hurdles. There's a certain element of protectionism within the provinces that certainly would come into play. But I'll go back to your Alberta Perspectives research, and this is an interesting finding too. Almost 500 responses, 467 members of yours respond to this and asked, what should Canadian governments prioritize to help your business compete? Check out this graphic. I mean, the number one response, and just barely, but still the number one response was eliminate barriers to interprovincial trade. Number two, at 57%, work with the Americans to reinstate non-tariff trade. So we could call that pretty much, and easily the top two priorities. But I think it says something that the number one solution that they're looking for is within Canada.
Exactly, because I mean, when we look at our country as a whole, there's so much opportunity, and like I said, we're at a point where I think everybody is on the same page in terms of this needs to be addressed. Like, we need to fix what's happening in Canada internally, no matter what happens south of the border, no matter what happens with tariffs. I think this has come front and center, and there's a lot of momentum behind it. And we need to keep pushing it because we need to be, as I said, we need to be much more insular in terms of our economy from a national perspective, so that we can support our businesses to trade across borders and to shore up some of those supply chain issues that potentially we could be looking at if tariffs come into play.
Your colleagues at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce with some pretty interesting findings, diving into which Canadian cities and which Canadian provinces are most exposed to the president's tariffs. And it turns out that Calgary and Lethbridge, I'm assuming oil and gas and
agribusiness,
beef, agribusiness
Yeah.
are among the most exposed Canadian cities here. Alberta, the second most vulnerable province to these tariffs. I think Danielle Smith's been making the message about Alberta clear, but to see it municipally broken down, pretty interesting stuff.
It really is, yeah. And it just, hits so close to home in terms of where we're actually going to be impacted in this province. I think, a lot of the early rhetoric was, Ontario definitely was going to have, a huge hit in terms of, their cross-border relationships. But I mean, when you talk about those two specific industries, oil and gas and agribusiness, one of the things that, in Alberta we can really be thinking about, and actually Karina said this, is, why aren't we refining in our own province, in our own country? Why aren't we processing all of those, the stock or the wheat or the grain, whatever the agri product is, why aren't we processing that in Alberta? Why is it going back and forth across the border so many times? So I think those are other things we can be thinking about in terms of long term. And again, this is not happening overnight, but this is a matter of thinking about how do we actually shore up some of these industries and provide more value added to our own production within Alberta or within Canada versus having to ship it back and forth.
Are you optimistic when you see the premiers getting together and talking? Like, are you optimistic that there might actually, I've been doing talk shows for almost 20 years and I can't think of how many times I've had conversations with advocates for eliminating interprovincial trade barriers. And I'm talking since the very beginning, and it was probably before me. Does it feel different this time around, considering what's happening in DC?
It really does. I think because, like I said, it's made us look in the mirror and really face the fact that we need to really address the issues and challenges that we have internally within the country, so that we can be much more resilient and in a better position if any future, talks of tariffs, or if they come to pass, or, even any other country, comes at us in a way that would, harm our GDP and 100%. Our economy. So we need to be really thoughtful about that. And I think right now there is an impetus and there is a lot of action towards the fact that we can do much better in Canada, and we need to collaborate amongst the provinces. We need to collaborate to make that happen. And I think more than ever, there's been a lot of movement towards that from our leadership, which is very positive from our perspective. And again, as chambers, we're doing the same thing. We're really, really banding together as a nation of provincial chambers to work towards something that will actually have lasting impact on how we trade in our country.
Anybody that has a family doctor has probably heard their doctor talking about being proactive instead of reactive with their own personal health, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like this wake up. I'm just even thinking we would, I think, qualify as a micro business, our operation here at Relay, but certainly a small business. And you look for ways, and many people are discovering ways that their costs are going to go up or their business will be impacted by this type of thing. But you also realize, again, like you said, it's not just the Americans, and it's not just under this president, and it's not just right now. You kind of want a wake-up call to serve as maybe the moment where your business, your organization, your advocacy kind of took a leap forward and never looked back.
Yeah.
And it's more than just words. I'm talking about tangible lessons learned, to benefit the health of the business and, of course, the wellness and prosperity of Canadians.
Absolutely. And that's, what we're all working towards. And like I said, it's been, very positive in terms of our ability to speak with our elected officials. There's been lots of access and lots of conversations. So just looking forward to continuing that conversation and moving this momentum forward, because as I said, I think now is the time. And I think there are many things that we could be doing that would help support our businesses, who in turn support their local economies and retain those jobs that maybe are at risk with tariffs coming into play.
One of the big events that you and your team at the Alberta Chambers of Commerce put on is coming up on March 13th. I've had it circled on my calendar for months. It's the 2025 Political Action Day and MLA dinner. I've tried to make clear to our audience why you've got to be a member of the Alberta Chambers and why you got to be in the room here. And I'm just talking about what we do as political commentators. We lock the doors, nobody tweets what we say, and we take questions from the audience and have an absolute blast saying what we really think about politics. I see I'm going to be paired up with Jen Gerson from the line, and maybe you got a couple others in your pocket. But look at this. You've always had sort of bipartisan representation. You'll have the Premier there, Danielle Smith, speaking. You'll have the leader of the Alberta NDP, Naheed Nenshi, there speaking, and a whole lot more. What's the elevator pitch for people that maybe don't have the 13th of March circled on their calendar yet?
It's just absolutely, such a fantastic event in terms of access. It's not just the leaders of the parties, but the MLAs themselves, the ministers themselves. So, if you're in a business and you have, challenges that you'd like to have a conversation, face-to-face conversation with our elected officials about, that's the opportunity to do it. And it's, as you said, it's Chatham House rules. So it's in an environment where it's very safe and very open. And we tend to get very direct answers to the questions that we're asking from our elected officials.
I've always been surprised.
Yeah.
I've been surprised at the candor in the room. And I think that's why you probably, it seems to me like the room grows. You add a few tables every single year.
Yeah.
And I know you can't promise access to politicians, but one of the reasons why these networking events are so important, I think, like you're saying, is for entrepreneurs or community members. Oftentimes you want to be able to look an elected representative in the eye, even if it's for 20 seconds, or a minute, and say, listen, this is how this policy is affecting me. This is something that would be a meaningful reform or meaningful action for our business or for our community, and actually feel heard. And that's an important part of democracy.
Yeah, and that is so critically important. And that's why this is such a unique event. It's one of a kind, really. We don't see other opportunities like this where you get that level of access and you have that many elected officials in the same room at the same time, all the way up to the senior leadership of the various parties. Again, what's really nice is it's nonpartisan. So, we give equal time and equal space, and make sure that everybody has the opportunity to be exposed to the individual that they would like to speak with as much as possible. Obviously, it's a big room, but
no promises. But I just want to let people know I'm excited to be there, and I encourage Real Talkers to attend as well. It's always a great time. We'll put the link to purchase tickets in the show notes, and also, as we're showing on the screen right now, applications, for nominations. I wish we could apply. You have to be nominated to win an Alberta Business Award of Distinction. That's going to be going June 19th.
That's right.
And nominations and submissions are open right now.
They are, and they're already rolling in. I think we have 50 open applications already, and they just launched. So really exciting. Last year we had the most nominees we've ever seen and finalists. Again, it's just a wonderful way to celebrate Alberta businesses. And I think specifically this has been a bit of a, roller coaster year. This is going to be a great year. We've been through lots of challenges and roller coasters in the last 5 years, for instance. But, with everything that's going on, south of the border, now is the time to really recognize that innovation, that intuition, the absolute creativity of the things that our businesses in Alberta are doing, and the ways that they are managing the challenges that they're being faced with, and continue to grow and expand their operations. And it's just such a fantastic opportunity to do that. And it's absolutely, one of my favorite events that we do. They're all great events, but just being able to get into a room and celebrate what our businesses are doing in the province is just so special. And it's just such a wonderful way to say thank you to the entrepreneurs that, again, are supporting our communities, supporting the jobs, and supporting all of the things that happen in the province of Alberta that make us so special and unique.
It's okay to have a favorite event.
Is it? Good.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
I'm just looking.
Don't tell my team that, right?
Yeah. I'm looking through the nominations, and there's a whole bunch of different ones. And so I'd say this to plant a seed with our audience. Again, the link to nominate in the show notes: the Business Innovation Award of Distinction, the Community Attraction Award of Distinction, the EDI Award of Distinction, Female Entrepreneurs, Global Growth, Health and Wellness, Indigenous Business Award, the Marketing, Mentorship, the Newcomer Entrepreneur Award of Distinction. How cool is that? The Small Business, and then the Young Entrepreneur Award of Distinction. So a lot of cool ones, some sponsorship opportunities as well. You can learn all of the details and, of course, get registered. Become a member today by visiting the website abchamber.ca. That's the Alberta Chambers of Commerce, where our friend Shauna Feth is president and CEO. As a business owner myself, thanks for your advocacy and thanks for hanging out with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Our pleasure. And I would just say maybe that's a shout out to some of your listeners, Ryan, that, you could be nominated for
there we go.
So,
this is me subtly planting the seed.
Yeah.
Well, that would be a big deal. I think Johnny and I would have to put a trophy case on the brick wall right behind us here if that were to happen.
That would be fantastic.
I love
All
it.
right.
Well, Shauna, it's nice to see you again, and thanks for coming in.
Yeah, my pleasure.
You bet.
All
Shauna
right.
Feth, the president and CEO of the Alberta Chambers of Commerce. This conversation has been made possible with the support of our friends at Friesen Brothers. Hey, noob, try again. This one's for you. We're giving you a shout out if you're still enjoying that. He might be on his second or third mocha. Was it a latte? He's having a croissant. I don't blame him.
It's dangerous.
Yeah, whatever, buddy. Help yourself and enjoy hanging out there in the Friesen Brothers kitchen. That's one of the many things that sets this place apart. I know I rave about it all the time, but there's a reason why we're proud to partner with our friends at Friesen Brothers. 2025, a huge year for them as they celebrate 70 years in business. And you know what? They've got an amazing thing happening right now. They're partnering up with the team at Nate to celebrate the future of Alberta food. I know we're talking to you a lot about events right now, friends, but that's just because there is a lot going on. You can find out the details here on their website. We're showing it to you now at friesen.com. That's FRESON.com. A one-of-a-kind culinary event that's going on at Nate's Ernest's Dining Room, which is a really, really neat and unique location. This is 6 teams of student chefs and butchers, bakers, hospitality experts that are going to be competing to create an unforgettable dining experience. You, as a guest, will get to taste and vote for the People's Choice Award, all while enjoying a multi-course meal prepared by the students. This is a really exciting way to support local talent and experience Alberta's food scene in a whole new way. Now, tickets are limited and it will sell out. So if you want to be there coming up on February 22nd, make sure you get your tickets today at friesen.com/challenge. If you're looking for a challenge yourself, maybe level up your level of education, your readiness or preparedness for a competitive but opportunity-laden job market, you're going to want to take a couple of minutes today to check out the AU Advantage at athabascau.ca. Now, they're offering online education, which for a lot of people is the reason why they're choosing AU. Your only commute is to your device. They've got transfer credit available. You can learn more on their website. Maybe you completed a year or two of studies many, many years ago. You could get a head start in your new program, your online undergrad program, maybe your online grad program. I'm feeling led to mention the Athabasca University MBA right now. I feel like maybe there's somebody out there that's always wanted to go earn that MBA. Maybe this is your time. You can learn more about the AU Advantage, how they're empowering learners worldwide by checking out their website today. That's athabascau.ca. Complete Care Restoration is working to restore properties and rebuild peace of mind for hundreds and hundreds of families across Western Canada. It's what they've been doing better than anybody else for more than a quarter century. Professional property restoration services based out of Edmonton and ready to respond 24/7. One of the things I love about Complete Care Restoration, they'll take over. They'll work with your insurance company so you don't have to be the liaison. You can take it off your plate completely with the full confidence in this trained and certified team that treats every project like it's their own. We saw them build our studio. We've seen how they operate, and we're proud to partner with Complete Care Restoration. If you're looking to figure out your employment situation in 2025, maybe spring's approaching, maybe your EI's running out right now, you have experience working as a team, you're a hard worker, you're a self-starter, you're just looking for the perfect opportunity, Kubi Renewable Energy is hiring right now at all of their locations. I'm talking Calgary, Lethbridge, Edmonton, and Kamloops. They're looking for installers. They're looking for sales professionals. They're looking for office managers. You can find out all of the details by checking out their website. Recently redesigned, by the way. They did a beautiful job with it. You can find Kubi online at kubi.ca. And I want to make sure that you have March ready to rock in support of UCAN Youth Services. We've been talking about their comedy nights. You know, we're very proud to be partnering with UCAN Youth Services. Well, coming up from the 10th to the 12th of March, and again from the 17th to the 19th, they proudly present Comedy Nights 2025 at the Starlight Casino and at Rick Bronson's comic strip, all in support of the amazing programs that this Edmonton-based nonprofit has been working on, transforming lives of young adults aged 18 to 25 that just need a shot. They need somebody to put an opportunity in front of them, show a little faith, and sky's the limit. With educational programs, with ease into work programs, with entry-level employment partnerships with local employers. Could that be you? UCAN Youth Services is doing remarkable work with their relentless team. You can learn more about the details and book your table today at ucan.ca. Lot to talk about. Redneck Philosopher says EI's running out. Is that really why some people finally look for work? Is that news to you, Redneck Philosopher? I know that there's a lot of people right now that, you know, they find themselves in a situation where they've been laid off. I want to acknowledge more friends of ours. I just got this news the other day, Johnny, and it feels like I don't mention this every single time it happens because it happens so often, so frequently, but another round of layoffs at big Canadian media conglomerates, at the big media brands, more layoffs right now, and there's so much uncertainty, I know, in a lot of people's employment situation, and so you get that buyout, you get the severance pay, or maybe you're on EI, but the landscape changes, and all of a sudden, especially for people that have families, that have, you know, bills, obviously the reality that everybody faces, and all of a sudden you realize that the financial support that you've had is running out in a couple of weeks, and all of a sudden you kind of get into a position where you maybe don't want to use the word panic, but that's exactly what you're feeling. And so I don't know, I love that. One of the things that our partners here on the show include is when they're hiring, when there's employment opportunities. I'm happy to put that out there because you never know. We heard from a team today, and I don't think that they would mind us sharing. But how cool is this? We got a note just this morning, literally today, from our friends at Apex Automation, and they sent us a message like 10 minutes before we started recording. And Jamie over at Apex says, hey, listen, says we're onboarding a new team member this week in our engineering department, and he told us that he heard about Apex on Real Talk.
There you go.
I just honestly felt this like pride. I was like, I feel like whoever this person is that's got a new job in engineering at Apex Automation, how cool is that they heard about that from being a member in the Real Talk community, and I wish them a long and prosperous career at Apex. How cool is that?
Great that we had a hand in it. That's awesome.
Yeah, no kidding. A small part to play, but a part nonetheless. Pretty neat to hear from Karina Gould in here. She's fighting. Did you, when we were talking about naming this episode and we called it Karina Gould Underdog, part of me was going, is that like, will she take that as an insult? Is that something she would take as like a disparaging remark? Yeah. But it is what it is. She's got to kind of fight for the spotlight and fight for the headlines and work to get her policy in front of people because, I mean, as I said to her face, this is pretty much from a media commentary standpoint turned into Mark Carney's win. They're still quite a ways away, right? Not even a lot of people. Chrystia Freeland was talking about tariffs just the other day. I thought maybe we'd roll this. I didn't want to take Karina's time on the show to play like a minute of her competitor in the leadership race, but I did think this was interesting coming from Canada's former Deputy Prime Minister. She's Canada's former Minister of Finance, as you know, up until a short time ago. But Chrystia Freeland putting her policy out in front of Canadians, in particular card-carrying Liberal Party members that'll be choosing their next leader. But she says it's time to hit Donald Trump and, in particular, Elon Musk exactly where it hurts.
Our retaliation is going to be a lot more surgical than that. We are going to go after American stakeholders who matter to the White House. I have proposed a 100% tariff on all Teslas. I am calling on all the countries that are affected by this tariff to join us. And our retaliation will target specific Trump constituencies. Another group that we're going to go after is Wisconsin dairy farmers. We know how important they are for the president, and we're not going to let them sell their products in Canada anymore. But I also want to say to you, Erin, we don't have to do this.
Yeah.
We have a balanced, mutually beneficial relationship with the United States. We think the best path is to continue with that relationship. We will design our retaliation to target the people who we think are the most influential. The people who, if they are feeling pain from our retaliation, will say to the president, let's not do this anymore. That's the outcome that we want. And by the way, we think that's going to be the best outcome for the U.S. too.
That was Chrystia Freeland speaking on CNN. So wants to go after Wisconsin dairy farmers. Dairy's always been, and this is not a dad joke, and I'm just going to finish my sentence. Wasn't even trying to be cute, but like it always has been kind of the sacred cow in Canada with supply management. I know I couldn't help it. It was just, that'll be kind of interesting to see, because you look at what Donald Trump has talked about, and he's talking about the access that Americans do not have to Canadian markets, and he's picked on a few in particular. He's talked about agriculture, he's talked about dairy, and he's also talked about American banks, which I think that Canadians are still trying to sort out exactly what that looks like or exactly what that means. But pretty interesting stuff from Chrystia Freeland. Let us know what you think about that to talk at RyanJespersen.com as these conversations continue. That's exactly where AJ sent us this email. He caught our attention with the subject line, buy Canadian and buy local. He says, first, I want to say I've been listening to Real Talk on Spotify since I stumbled across your program about a year and a half ago. AJ, we're glad to have you on board. He says, I'm really appreciating all of those upgrades on Spotify. Don't get Johnny and I talking about Spotify. We get excited about Spotify.
I love it.
Maybe we'll check in on our Spotify poll this. Why don't we check in on can you get that ready? We'll check out our poll. We put out a poll question yesterday. Back to AJ's email. He says, I rarely get a chance to watch live on YouTube. I'm usually in meetings, but I'm loving the chance to watch HD video of Real Talk in the same spot where I've always listened to the audio, usually while I'm walking my dog. He says, all this talk about buying Canadian is absolutely fantastic, especially groceries. But the one thing I've not heard from any media is about our local farmers markets. He says part of it is probably the time of year. There's lots of people that are associating farmers markets with obviously lovely days in spring and summer, but there's at least 3 that I know of in and around the city operating right now, says AJ. He says you've got Old Strathcona's Market up on White Ave. I mean, that's just a classic, a legendary one on Saturdays. He goes, you've got the Salisbury Farmers Market out of the Greenhouse in Sherwood Park on Thursday evenings, and then Bountiful. I haven't even heard of that, AJ. He says also on the weekends you can go there, buy direct from producers, talk to the folks that are making those products, whether it's jewelry, art, baking, flowers, fruits, veggies, meats, so much more. He says, now, full disclosure. Oh, here we go, AJ. He says, full disclosure. I do have a bit of a personal interest in writing this. That's okay. He says, because about 12 years ago, my wife started up her own bakery based out of our home, taking her goods to go sell at the market. She started at Salisbury, expanded to the now shuttered downtown farmers market. I think there's news on that, isn't there, AJ? He says, and then moved there from Old Strathcona a couple of years ago. Winters are tough on the markets because the crowds shrink, and some may not realize that they're still open through these months. The cold and the snow makes it harder for people to get there. But if you're looking for Canadian, if you're looking to support local, it doesn't get any more local than fresh and direct from the producer at the market. He says, make sure you head down to your local farmers market and check out all the vendors. Keep up the great work. That from AJ. Thank you for your email. You a farmers market guy at all?
Me? When I'm forced. Isn't that always? And here's the thing.
Johnny!
Look, partners, women, we love you.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I love farmers markets, but I don't want to go to them at 10 a.m. on Saturday.
Yeah,
You're
a DJ.
That seems to be the time that my partner and other people who I know who love farmers market, we have to go early on Saturday. There'll be nothing on Sunday. There'll be nothing after noon hour on Saturday. We have to go at 10 a.m. That makes me adverse to them.
Yeah.
However, when I have gotten there, early or late, great place. Love the farmers market. Love supporting local. Love getting like fresh vegetables and fruit And I loved like anything jarred and pickled. I'm all about it. I'm searching through it. I'm grabbing at least 3 cans.
Yeah.
I love a lot of the plant-based stuff that is there, and that's one of the main reasons I go. But just don't like the timeline, Ryan. Don't like the early.
Well, who is asking a DJ to get up at 9 a.m. and get to the farmer's market? You've been spinning since 3, and then now you're supposed to go. You're the guy with the low like flat brim and the sunglasses on inside.
But I've long since the days of me sleeping till like 4 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday are over. But at the same time, it's and as a partner, when I get asked, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. But in my head, I'm like, this is not something I want to do. I do not want to go there at 10 a.m. But yeah, let's go. It'll be fun.
Yeah, well, you earn points. You're earning
of
points.
Course.
Yeah,
you got to give to get.
AJ did share his wife's Instagram, so why don't we do her a solid, and you can follow her at Oh My Goodies Yeg.
Oh, nice.
Oh My Goodies Yeg. That's a great name. You can follow her on Instagram. Whitestream with an interesting comment in the Real Talk live chat, powered by Park Power, says not having supply management in beef, pork, and chicken is one of the main reasons why family farms are disappearing. Says we need supply management in those areas as well. Interesting point, Whitestream. I hear you. I'm going to let that bang around in my brain a little bit. I do know that it has been kind of, I don't speak on behalf of dairy producers, and I definitely don't speak on behalf of beef producers, but I do know there has been kind of a contentious relationship there, right? Both raise cattle, but both have very different business landscapes, very different regulatory landscapes. They see different price fluctuations in their market, and the beef ranchers are like yelling hell yeah right now, right? You understand what I'm talking about. So isn't that interesting? I wonder if there would be Whitestream political will for a political leader to step up and introduce supply management. I'm not sure. That would be a real disruptor. I know that there's been a lot of talk of remember Maxime Bernier, the leader of the People's Party of Canada. They're not really registering in polls, and I think that probably safe to say Pierre Poilievre's stamp on the Conservative Party of Canada has all but eradicated the People's Party of Canada. Not to suggest that some people, I'm not trying to insult the 2 or 3 or 4% of you that might vote for the People's Party of Canada. Do whatever you want, fill your boots. But I feel like Pierre Poilievre has made the Conservative Party maybe feel like more of a home for would-be PPC supporters that may not have felt at home under Andrew Scheer or Aaron O'Toole or another former Conservative leader. Safe to say. If you totally disagree with me, let me know what you think. And, of course, we're always looking for submissions as well to the Flamethrower. That'll be an early edition of the Flamethrower coming up this week. It's going to be on our Thursday episode of the show. That's the 20th of February. We're going to be taking a bit of a break here on Real Talk for a week or so. Personal reasons. Going to go have some fun, get out of this polar vortex. And so the final episode of Real Talk in about a week is going to be on the 20th of February. You can catch that. That includes the Flamethrower presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. We'll be back live on Monday, March 3rd. We've asked for the premiere for that episode. I'm not sure if we're going to get it, but we're going to try. We've been asking and asking and asking. There's a million questions people want answered about a million different things. People want to know about, obviously what the plan is with tariffs. People want to know about these allegations, the scandalous allegations involving the healthcare system. People obviously have a ton of questions about coal mining in the Rockies. We've not forgotten about these stories. I mean, is it true, as noted in a statement of claim, that the Premier's chief of staff went to the CEO of Alberta Health Services and essentially tried to get a podcaster fired? That's a question that I know a lot of people are asking. And so we hope to speak with Danielle Smith at some point in the next couple of weeks. I did also want to follow up on our coverage of this cougar kill, this controversial cougar kill that obviously went down in Kananaskis country a while ago now. And we were talking to John E. Marriott. John, obviously an accomplished photographer and somebody that I think has as co-founder of a wildlife conservancy organization called Exposed Wildlife Conservancy, takes this kind of stuff personally. He takes his advocacy personally. And I wanted to recognize some great reporting by Bob Covey and his team at the Jasper Local. This is an independent outlet based out of Jasper. They punch outside their weight class and really do a remarkable job. You can check them out online at jasperlocal.com, and I'll link to the article in the show notes. But they riff off our interview with John Marriott, and this was published on the 14th of February. Alberta's cougar harvest policy doesn't track, writes Mark Bradley and Bob Covey in collaboration on this story. They're talking about the interview that John Marriott did with us, and then they're going in and talking about some of the changes that have happened, some of the regulatory changes that have been introduced by the UCP government in Alberta, and how it's impacting cougar hunting, including outfitters, including hunters that are traveling to Alberta, in some cases from the United States, to hunt, the controversy around these dogs with GPS collars and the methods of hunting. Now, I know everybody has an opinion on this, on what cougar hunting should look like, and I do want to let you know the first week of March we'll be getting kind of the other side of the story, if you want to call it that, from the team at Bloodsport Origins. They've taken issue with some of the conversation around cougar hunting that we've had on our show, and they want to have their voice heard, and that's kind of what we're all about. So I've let them know, I'm not certain that we're going to see eye to eye on this one. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure we're not going to see eye to eye on this one, but I'm not afraid to have conversations about it. And I think that our understanding of the issue will be made more rich by understanding their point of view. But I did want to also circle back on John E. Marriott's Instagram page. And he's been obviously following this story. He was the one that broke the news that the cougar had been hunted in the first place, leaving behind 2 kittens. And if you check out his Instagram posts, and he's just been on this story literally around the clock. You can see this Johnny Under Darkness, and I'm not suggesting it's nefarious, but it took him some time. Fish and wildlife officers in or near K Country were able to finally trap and capture those 2 cougar kittens, and you can see them on video in John Marriott's posts on his Instagram grid. And so you can check that out at John E. Marriott. You can get a sense of the size. I know that there's been some debate around these kittens, and advocates for the hunt are saying that these, they weren't spotted kittens and they're old enough to fend for themselves, and everybody's being dramatic. As you can see, and let me even try to zoom in here on my screen if it'll work. As you can see, this fish and wildlife officer, if you're comparing the size of that cat to the size of the officer, that's a very small cougar. I've seen it reported and estimated that these cougar kittens are about 4 months old. And so the reporting right now, Johnny, is that they're being held by the Calgary Zoo. And I'm just going to switch here to another video to give you another kind of view of these kittens. And this all in the interests of everybody making up their own minds and everybody making informed decisions on this, informed opinions. But we're showing you on the screen right now, for the benefit of the podcast listeners, I'm showing you a video from John E. Marriott's Instagram page. You can see these 2 orphaned cubs. These are not, I'm not a wildlife biologist, but this does not look to me like 2 kittens that are ready to fend for themselves out in the wild. And so this is a story where now you've got 2 cougar kittens reported to be 4 months old that are under the care of the Calgary Zoo. And I guess, probably people that have been following this story, if you're like me, you have kind of mixed emotions. Like, number one, you're grateful that these cats were able to be captured and that they will be receiving good care, that they're not going to starve to death in the wild, which is what a lot of people were saying was their fate. But at the same time, you have 2 wild cougar cubs that were taken out of the wild because their mother was hunted legally. She was hunted legally. I'm making that very clear. But now they're going to spend the rest of their life in captivity, which I think for a lot of people is probably not the ideal outcome in this type of scenario, right?
I don't think any of this is like, oh, great. Like, I would much rather they be in the wild with their parent. That didn't happen, and then they do look too young. I think if a wildlife, somebody else commented in the chat, if a wildlife expert or professional can get these cats unsedated, they're probably going to be they're going to be shown and exposed to danger in the wild. But at the same time, that wouldn't have happened if they had their parent around. But at the same time, now they have a chance at life, but that life is lived in captivity. None of this is really good. But I mean, this is the game we're playing when we're trying to constantly. And I know that with that short, we had a lot of people rifling back about, how many other species of wildlife cougars kill and all things like that. And we have to keep their population down, and we have to keep this other population up, and we have to control all the populations. And all I know is that all the research shown is that we are never able to do it properly. There has never been a call. There has never been where things go perfectly and there's the right amount of bighorn sheep to cougar ratio. There's always, you have to constantly mess with the numbers. You have to constantly intervene, which is kind of what we've always done, without knowing it, is intervene with wildlife because we're living in their lands where they're supposed to be living, wild. But I think all of it, there's no right answer. And that's why whenever you're watching these videos and you're saying Johnny, every 2 sentences, Johnny, I don't know what the right answer is here, Ryan. I have no idea. I have no idea.
We always say with this show, like, we promise to remain perpetually curious and we promise to seek to understand. And so I want to know where people land on this and why.
I think it's just sad.
And I've called myself a hypocrite on the show before. I acknowledge that I'm a bleeding heart for some animals and quite frankly don't come across in the same way for others. I use the fishing example, like the difference between a yellowfin tuna and a dolphin and a whale. And I'm happy to have those conversations. I prefer those conversations over beers with friends or hashed out on a platform like this, informed by you in our live chat with emails. Cactus Sheriff is not wrong, saying if a Fish and Wildlife officer was able to capture them unsedated, they were definitely not ready to fend for themselves in the wild. Sylvie just says, I'm so glad they were able to save the kittens. Sharon says they're still so young. Justin says, I'm very glad they're able to find and help these cubs. They're absolutely beautiful animals. They're incredible animals. I mean, I've just been sitting and watching. You can show the video again if you want. I just watched this reel the whole time. Part of me, like the absolute idiot, is like, could I domesticate one of these?
No. They're still like, even looking at them when they were being kind of dragged in the cage into the truck, you see how ferocious they can get even at this age. I mean, like, they're fucking dangerous. I get that.
They watched Mama
but at the same
bring
time,
supper home.
You can't look at this and be like, oh, this is a great outcome. I think the whole thing is just sad.
Yeah.
But like, what can we do? We're constantly intervening in the circle of life, which isn't even a scientific reference. It's from The Lion King, let's be honest. But you know what I mean? We're constantly meddling, and that's just one of the downfalls of human existence is we're here on this planet messing with all these ecosystems constantly.
Justin says a proper life was stolen from those cougars. And then here's a point from last night. Last night says everybody loves cougars until they eat their pet. And that is 100% true as well.
Yeah,
I want to recognize Real Talker Kaz, who sent in, he texted it to me actually personally, and so I don't have it to show on the screen, but Kaz sent me a note, and he had listened to the show, and he said, listen, I appreciate your coverage. He's a hunter. He said, I appreciate your coverage of this. I appreciate you talking about it. He says, I recognize that kind of legal but unethical angle that John Marriott took on this. He goes, but here's some video, and he sent me a Ring camera video. As a matter of fact, I wonder if I could call it up on what we call NDI here, Johnny. But he sent me this video, and this is from his friend's house. And he basically says, like, if this was captured on your Ring camera, what would you do about it? And this was like their doorbell camera. They live in a rural area, but not in the sticks. They're not in the middle of nowhere. And, right through their front sort of driveway area between the Quonset and the house is this massive and magnificent cougar.
Sure.
But it's dragging the family dog in its mouth, and the dog has obviously perished. And it's a good sized dog. I mean, it looked to me in the video like kind of a 100-pound farm dog. And this cougar's just dragging the dog across the front yard, basically, on its way to wherever it was taking it. And Kaz says to me, I got to say, like, regardless of how you feel about the hunt, regardless of how you feel about regulations, if that happened on my property, he's like, that cat is toast. And I understand with people that are losing livestock. I understand with people, we've seen these videos. You remember we had that guest on about 6 months ago? Remember the guy that was in, where was he, in North Vancouver, and he built the bear gate in his fence because like amazing. The black bears are just walking through their property and knocking his fence down. So he built a bear gate. There's people we see that, like, there was a video that was released in, what was it, Kamloops or Kelowna? Real Talkers helped me out here. This was on Instagram like just a few weeks ago of a guy and his partner. They're sitting in the hot tub in their backyard. Have you seen this? And there's like rustling in the bushes, and they're super chill. They're in the hot tub, and she's like, honey, there's rustling, and he goes, oh yeah, it's probably rabbits. And then he's got his phone out and he's filming, and then all of a sudden you just see the eyes, and it's a cougar like 2 feet from the hot tub. I don't know if you saw this video. Like, number one, it's time to change the hot tub water. If that happens to me, I will just say that hot tub water is going to need to be changed.
It's like a nice soup or something. But yeah, we've all seen these videos of. I seen a horrible one the other day of a coyote, jumping a fence, and a owner coming out and saving his 2 dogs by just being as loud as he could. I get it, but and this is why I get tripped up talking about this, because I know there's no perfect answer. I know I'm not like the most educated on everything, but I do look into this, especially with the culling and trying to control ecosystems and wildlife. It just humans, we can never do it right. But the one thing I'll say is that the for-profit stuff is what rubs me really the wrong way. And I understand that people need to be paid for being involved in wildlife and trying to treat and protect and keep wildlife at a certain number and all of that. But when you're talking about like on the short we showed, like thousands of dollars, like that just rubs me the wrong way. That encourages people to go out and kill animals for profit. And let's just be honest, a lot of them are having fun doing it. And all that just kind of doesn't sit well with me, right? It just doesn't.
Well, and I think people feel differently. Here, you can show this video. Here it is. So this is from I was wrong, by the way. It wasn't Kaz who sent this in. This was Davis. But check this out. So if you're watching us now live, like there goes you see the dog underneath it. Like, sorry for anybody that doesn't want to see this, but this is the Ring camera of
I'd
somebody.
lose my mind if this is
like that's
yeah.
I don't know what that is. That looks like a German Shepherd. I don't know what that is, but that is a massive cat. I'll show it one more time here. And I understand what Davis is saying with this. I mean, look at it. The cat's kind of poking around. Is that like a guest house on the side or something like that? Or maybe it's just their surveillance camera that caught this. But, he basically just says, like, if this is happening to my family, I would have no problem getting rid of this cougar if it happened to me and took my dog. So, I guess the point that I'm making here as well, and Real Talkers would be right to ask, well, what are you talking about a family's safety or the viability of a livestock operation versus, tags for trophy hunting. And obviously they are two different conversations. But in the context of the relationship that humans have with wildlife, and as we expand our cities and expand our footprints, there's controversy in Canmore right now. It's not that far. I mean, this hunt happened in Kananaskis country. We've briefly talked about this on the show, and maybe this is something we'll sink our teeth into more at a later date. But Canmore right now is looking, they've got a real affordability crisis. They've got a housing crisis there, and developers are looking to expand Canmore's footprint because there's demand for condos in this stunningly beautiful mountain town. And the locals are finding that with the added interest and obviously with a super hot real estate market, that people that live and work in Canmore, a lot of people that have lived and worked there for 20 or 30 years simply can't afford to live there. And so Canmore Town Council is looking at imposing, and I don't know all the details, but basically like a tax for non-resident property owners, right? So if you were to, even if your family lived in Calgary or Leduc or Grand Prairie and you wanted to purchase a condo in Canmore to use on the weekends, if you weren't living in Canmore, you'd have to pay this added tax. Developers are pissed off about it. Investors, property investors are pissed off about it. But I think locals are kind of cheering this on because what other solution is there? I think they've exhausted other attempts to try to find ways to procure more affordable housing in Canmore. Yeah. This is just to reiterate the fact that our communities are growing and they're impacting animal habitats, and kind of like, what do we expect? Right?
It's not just here. Like, as population growth continues, and now we're talking about, the housing crisis, and we just wait till we get out of this and we start building these millions of homes, and the more wildlife and the more ecosystem and the more forests and the more places we have to encroach on. It's just, I don't see any end to this argument. And I just, I'm not like some, what do they call it? A dehumanist or whatever, but I do believe that, we are kind of a plague to ourselves. Like we keep fighting these arguments about protecting wildlife, but there's no cure if we just keep procreating and more people become born and population increases, which is inevitably going to happen. We're just going to encroach on wildlife more and more. And when we're talking about animals, I think they can all be dangerous. And then it's just, we got to get rid of, call or control all the dangerous animals. That's an impossible task. It's never going to work. It's never going to work.
Huh.
So I think this stuff will continue. We'll continue to be outraged. We'll continue to try and find solutions. Those solutions will work. There's always going to be two sides to it. There's always going to be avid hunters who have their reasons, and there's always going to be people who are totally against hunting, and there's going to be people in the middle, like that guy who had his dog killed, who say, I enjoy wildlife, but I want to protect what's mine. And it's just...
Absolutely. Denis in our chat says deer kill more people in North America than any of the predators. And I'm going, hang on, wait, what? And so, sure enough, isn't this interesting? According to CNN, and I think that Denis must be talking about collisions, vehicle collisions.
Oh, yeah.
Did you know this? Around 2.1 million collisions between deer and vehicles occur annually, causing more than $10 billion in economic losses every year, accounting for 59,000 human injuries and 440 human deaths annually due to deer. I guess it's time to eradicate deer from the landscape.
The only time I ever almost hit an animal, it was a deer driving from Kelowna to Penticton. And it is like, there's nothing you can do. It was like, literally ran right across the bow of my fender, like my front bumper. And like, I was like, wow, that I would have been dead. Like it literally.
Oh, you didn't hit it?
No, got past me, but like literally like a foot.
Yeah.
So
my brother hit
if I had been going 5 kilometers faster, or if it had been going just a little
if you
slower,
would have left 3 seconds
through
earlier,
the windshield, I'm done.
It's like that movie Sliding Doors, man. You start to think of if you wouldn't have stopped at the red light, or if you would have stopped, or my brother hit a deer when he was a young driver, and I just remember the damage it did to the vehicle, obviously to the deer as well, but like it just shook him up big time. Get this, my childhood friend Brandon, his dad Dave, friends with my mom, drove one of those little MG sports cars, hit a moose driving an MG and managed to survive, if you can believe it. Ms. Katie says, if you live in their natural territory, talking about cougars, why would you let your dog out on its own? I mean, I don't live rural, but I think that's just kind of how it works. And farm dogs are a whole different breed. And I mean, you hear of some of these breeds that are used to protect cattle, for example, from coyotes and those types of things. I think that it's just a different story. It's different than letting your Shih Tzu or your Chihuahua out, right? Whitestream says, if you want to live rural, you got to live with the animals. Things like these killings, pet killings, they happen. You have to acknowledge and accept it. And if you can't, then you shouldn't live there. Alberta Girl quite rightfully asks, where are cougars safe if not in the mountains? Right? I mean,
I don't even know about owning small animals like chihuahuas and cats when you live in Banff and Jasper, and especially if you're letting them outside. I'm not saying it's your fault, but like that's very, very dangerous. So
yeah, 100%, man. Let us know what you think about all of this. Obviously, sometimes we'll get you the big interviews and talk about the big policy stuff, and sometimes it's just real life. Like a Ring camera video sent in by Real Talker Davis. These are his friends. Their real life, a cougar taking out their family pet probably shapes to a certain degree how they feel about cougars in their neighborhood, right?
Do you want to hear these polls from the last few days?
Yeah, these are on our Spotify.
Yeah, hit up our Spotify polls as well. We got HD video. We've got our shorts up there. This one is overwhelming. Do recent aviation disasters make you hesitant to fly? People are still saying no, 71%. But I did hear on another program, which I won't mention because we don't, but that number has moved a bit. They were doing some polling in the last 2 weeks that people are saying like flying is more dangerous, even though we know from the numbers it's not. But I think the last 2 months, we were talking about this yesterday with the 4 to 6 things that have happened in aviation. People are a little more hesitant to fly. So 71% say no, 14% say yes, they are more hesitant, and always hesitant to fly also in there with the remainder of those people, which is I'm one of those people. I am always scared to get on a plane. I'm always white knuckling when we take off and land. And then of course the Carney poll. Do you care how much a politician spends of their own money? We put that in brackets to make sure you knew it, because we're not saying they spend government money on their fashion. Do you care how much a politician spends of their own money on shoes? 96%, overwhelmingly, do not give a shit, right?
Interesting. You know what? I would always like to ask a follow-up question in that scenario, which is not how the Spotify polls work.
A poll after the poll.
But yes, but I would ask someone, if someone, we ask, do you care how much a politician spends of their own money on their fashion? They say no. And then I would probably want to ask, but does it matter, or does it factor in the political party that they represent or the policies that they have touted? Right? Because like you look at Jagmeet Singh and he's found himself widely criticized for like wearing a nice watch or carrying a nice handbag or whatever it is. Doesn't matter to me. I don't care. But I think for a lot of people, it's that kind of idea of like the champagne socialist. You know what I'm saying? Or for example, a conservative that I sometimes wonder, like if you're going to be like the like red meat conservative to your base, you're like, we are going to go lean government, cut taxes, which is what they all promise and very few deliver.
Always.
Right? Daniel Smith's not running a very lean government right now in Alberta. That's for sure. It's a very expensive government. And that's something that people should pay close attention to. But you sometimes wonder there, like, does wearing like kind of scuffed older shoes actually play well in a public forum, right? Like there's so much that goes into the wardrobe choice, or there should be so much that goes into the wardrobe choice for a politician.
It's going to get more interesting as these tariff, this whole battle with the U.S. heats up and could potentially get worse. I see the media and folks in general eyeing like what politicians are wearing, using, driving. Is it Canadian? You know what I mean? I feel like they're going to be under the microscope.
Yeah.
Like, are you wearing, are you wearing an Italian suit, or are you wearing, something from Dirks or whatever?
Sure. Well,
like,
yeah, I mean, they're
you know
bringing an Italian suit.
You know what I mean, though, right?
I do know what you mean. People are starting to think about it more.
Exactly, right?
Although we did take a look at the list of cars that are manufactured in Canada, and I don't like any of them, so we're going to have to figure something out there, yeah. Ken, they're all minivans, and Ken K says Jagmeet Singh is not allowed to have nice things, just like Bernie Sanders. Ken, nice one. But that's kind of right. Like if you saw Bernie Sanders wearing like a $1,500 leather jacket, it would weird you out, right? Wouldn't it weird you out? I think it probably would. So at Horse Lake Ranch, by the way, talking about animal populations, quite right in pointing out that elk and grizzlies used to live on the prairies. Says right where Edmonton is. The migration of grizzlies into the mountains is actually, if you want to go down a rabbit hole.
When you look at the time map,
fascinating.
I know it's insane.
Fascinating stuff.
Insane.
Those resilient grizzly bears, in my mind, two of my I can always answer questions for kids. When I go do read-in week and go to the elementary schools and read books, and they always want to know, what's your favorite animal, your favorite color, that type of thing. For me, no brainer.
You love the bears.
Grizzlies and orcas. Grizzlies and orcas are the two.
It's kind of like your kindred spirit.
Yeah,
I
maybe.
feel like
I don't know.
you're a bit of a bear guy. But
spread the word, Jespo, a big bear guy. Thanks, Johnny.
But seriously, no Canadian car. You would.
Man,
they
have you
make
seen
good
the
Cadillacs.
list? We talked about this before.
They make nice Cadillacs in Ontario.
Cars manufactured in Canada. 15 cars made.
Pretty sure they make caddies in Oshawa.
This was the Surex poll that I pointed out the other day. So this is Surex.com. We're just doing this on the fly, having fun, friends. But and I'm no disrespect to anybody. Oh, the Dodge Charger's okay. The Charger, the Challenger, they got that Hellcat, which is the 700 horsepower Dodge. Feels like a bit of a stripper car, to be honest with you, but I'd still drive it. The Dodge Caravan, the Chrysler 300, which is okay. That's kind of like that gangster looking car, but not really. It's like grandpa gangster. You know what I mean? The Chrysler Pacifica, the Grand Caravan, the minivan, the Chevy Equinox, the Lincoln Nautilus, which is like their mid-level, the Econo Lincoln. Why are we giving them all free advertising? The Ford Edge, the Ford GT, that's pretty sick. The Toyota RAV4, the Lexus RX, which is fine. And then the always affordable and practical Honda Civic Sedan Coupe and CRV. So these are your choices. And maybe there are others that are manufactured
Caddies. I'm pretty sure Caddies are made in Canada.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
A few models are made in.
Maybe you're right.
And my next, Once this vehicle that I'm running into the ground, which is over 20 years old, is gone, my next vehicle is going to be an EV. I'm going to get as close to Canadian made as I can. Even with cars, like there's no way. There's got to be parts made other places, but at least maybe Canadian assembled if I can.
I've not known. I was looking for are there cars that are actually Canadian car brands. Have you ever heard of a Felino?
No.
Check this out. This is the Felino CB7. Johnny, it's on my screen. This is a Canadian supercar. I've never heard of this. This is wow. Okay, the Felino CB7.
Jesus.
This is
actually.
Is that like a CB radio up in the roof? I don't know what it is. I have never seen this car before. I have never heard of this car before. It kind of looks to me like an old Datsun. it's kind of like if a Datsun and like a 77 Corvette Stingray had a baby and wrapped it in matte gray. There's Antoine Bissett, the CEO of Felino Cars. Who knew? You learn something new every single day.
There you go.
Here on Real Talk. Noob's wondering, Jespo, do you still have a Jeep? I sure do, buddy. 92 Cherokee, beefed up, body armor, snorkel, CB, ready to go. Ready to go. Always where off-roading is permitted and encouraged, and stay on the trails and out of stay out of the riparian zones, everybody. Protect the local fish population. And I'm not joking. I do mean that seriously and sincerely. Coming up on the next episode of Real Talk, we're going to check in with our good buddy Chris Labosse here. He's going to be down in Boston, Massachusetts for that big game, Canada and the U.S. It feels like this is about more than hockey, doesn't it? We're going to talk to Chris about that. Plus, we're celebrating innovation and research in women's health with a Real Talk roundtable that every single one of you will not want to miss. I guarantee it. Plus, the flamethrower. You've still got time to send us yours. We'll talk to you soon.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jespersen, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harmon Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjespersen.com.